So welcome everybody. We are excited to welcome you to the fourth edition of our supply chain chat series here at Algo. And today's topic is how to master inventory management for new product launches. So today we are welcoming two of our senior team members here at Algo who each bring many years of supply chain experience and working with global retail brands to really help them leverage their data for better business outcomes. So first up, we have Peter Fishman, Senior Director of Implementation Services. And sorry, Peter and Isaac, if you can help with that admit button, if you see that,
Absolutely.
that would be
Got
great. It. Awesome. Peter Fishman, Senior Director of Implementation Services. Peter heads up our implementation efforts with all new Algo clients. And during Peter's time here, he's worked closely with our software development team on the creation of Algo's supply chain planning tools, which have really expanded over the last couple of years. And Isaac Will, our Senior Account Executive, joining us today. Isaac has over 2 decades of experience in supply chain optimization, change management, and technology implementation. And Isaac also collaborates with our global retailers and brands and helps to identify opportunities for them to really boost profits, optimize margins, and really streamline their operations with Algo supply chain solutions. So Peter, how about I hand it over to you for a few words about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Karen. Welcome to everybody who's joined us here. I consider myself fortunate. I started my career over 20 years ago working with a supplier who operated true vendor managed inventory, where we controlled every aspect of that supply chain, from the initial buy of a new product to determining the optimal spread to many retailers that we serviced, to our own labor force going into stores to stock shelves, and then managing replenishment all the way through the end of the product life cycle. What that did for me as a youngster right out of college was provide me with a base understanding of the holistic supply chain and inventory management process, just super early in my career. And then from there, I've been fortunate to build upon that with meaningful roles, working with high volume, high SKU count product segments, such as physical media, DVDs, movies, games, but then also cosmetics and beauty supplies, and also electronics, computing, and gaming. And then, as Karen mentioned, currently at Algo, I work closely with our new customers on new products to ensure that the Algo platform that we implement for them provides the right solution for their needs.
Yeah, and Peter, we were talking about that before. I'd be kind of curious to learn a little bit more about your experience with different systems that you've worked with in previous roles.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the big players out there like SAP and Oracle, I've had to use those at points throughout my career, as well as a number of proprietary, custom software packages built in-house at companies that I've worked for. And what I can say about all of them is that at the end of the day, when I am planning for new product launches and managing inventory and trying to optimize, what it really comes down to within any of those software packages is I found myself at one point or another in the process needing to download or export out the data that I was working with, throw it into Excel, and then manually manipulate to truly optimize and incorporate all of the data elements that I wanted to really fine tune what my inventory plan was. So fast forward to now at Algo, and in the past few years working closely with our developers and software engineers, I've had the ability to work with them on developing some of our software modules that manage the new product launches and include a lot of those things that I used to do manually. So now we're able to deliver those to our clients in a pretty seamless fashion that really speeds up the effort and optimizes that initial product launch for them.
Great.
Yeah. So Isaac, I'm going to throw it right back to you. Do you want to give yourself a little introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So hello, everybody. I'm Isaac. In my career, I actually started off as a technical manager for an environmental company. I was responsible for technical infrastructure. I helped build a database for the U.S. Coast Guard and really was very involved in emergency response for different types of disasters that would happen in the continental U.S. From there, I transitioned into a role where I actually built out integrations between ERP systems and SaaS platforms. I thought that was really interesting and compelling because we were taking customers from where they were at to a position of where they wanted to be. And what I learned during that time is that I really enjoyed the customers helping to solve those problems. So I quickly transitioned into a role where I was in a solution engineering capacity, where I got to talk to customers on a daily basis that had problems, maybe didn't understand what it meant for their organization, but help them identify what those problems could mean if you were to solve them, what technology needed to be involved, and what impact that would have on their business. And in that capacity, I had the opportunity to talk with over 1,200 different suppliers and over hundreds of different retailers that were trying to collaborate to share information and really improve their business, improve their supply chains. So I really saw that as a key part of my career was being involved in that many different customers and that many different suppliers. We also worked with manufacturers, logistics companies, 3PLs, et cetera, all kinds of different types of organizations in the supply chain. What I really found was that a lot of companies were using Excel or other on-premise solutions that were outdated because they worked, and they worked well enough for now, and they maybe didn't understand that there was a better way. And I was able then to transfer that into a role where I'm now as an account executive, working more strategically with leadership, with the people who want to make changes in their organizations, and help them identify what that solution can look like and how they can really achieve their goals, their KPIs, and their strategic targets. And with that, Karen, I think I'll hand it back to you to take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks, Isaac. All right. So please tell me you can see the slides now.
Looks good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So just super quick for those of us hopping on the webinar today who aren't familiar with Algo, haven't heard of us before. So we have been around since 2008. Algo provides cloud-based subscription software for supply chain management. And we really are a supply chain intelligence solution that combines deep operational expertise with AI and ML to enable digital transformation. So we are an industry recognized leader in supply chain with analysts such as Gartner. We've got, had cool vendor awards in the past, et cetera. So yeah, that was just kind of a quick overview of Algo and where we sort of sit in the market. This is just a quick look at some of the fantastic brands and companies that we work with across 5 major industries. As Peter mentioned, we have a legacy history in working with studios over the years. And in the past several years, we've really focused on retail and consumer electronics. We really have a fantastic partner program that helps to drive our growth and scale here at Algo. So whether it's technology partnerships, pre-built integrations with major vendors like SAP, Oracle, Amazon, et cetera. So that just really helps extend our implementation ease as well. And just, sort of broadly across the supply chain flow, we sort of sit in the downstream demand planning. Really, we cover all aspects of planning within supply chain. So demand, inventory, replenishment, sales and merchandise planning. And of course, it's all powered with our advanced business intelligence within the Algo platform. All right, so that was really all that I wanted to touch on in terms of Algo. So I'm going to hand it back over to you, Peter.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. So what we're here to talk about today is how to master inventory management for new product launches. From a super high level, some things that get thrown into that is the ever-changing landscape and navigating that landscape. So store openings, closings, how do things like COVID or natural disasters impact all of your plans? Another thing is a single source of truth. We have so much data coming at us these days. Availability of data is at a peak level that we've never seen before. So how do you manage that, and how do you boil it down to understanding what is our single source of truth and not letting external sources that maybe aren't relevant or aren't the true source muddy the picture? But then also identifying the key tools that will drive your success. There are a lot of software packages and offerings. There's a whole world of tools available to us, but which ones are going to help your specific business achieve your success and how you define success. So all of those elements, if we boil them down, what are we really discussing here today? And that's how to get into the right position to make the best demand planning decisions for your product. So if I come at you with a statement here of what I want to get across to our audience here today, one of the most difficult aspects of demand planning and inventory management is finding the balance between overstocking and understocking your warehouses and stores. Very simply put, what is that balance? Finding that harmonized level of inventory in warehouses and stores. You go too heavy, you eat up your open to buy dollars, you burn through capital in dealing with markdowns or returns. You go too light, you're missing out on revenue. You're running into out of stock situations. You're leaving that consumer demand unsatiated. So you want to find that balance. Now, it can be difficult enough if what you're forecasting for is a steady state product, something that's evergreen, sells fairly reliably every day. Consumers make repeat purchases of that. Where it gets really tricky, and where I'm going to spend a lot of the time focusing here, is that new product introduction. And not just new product introduction where you don't have sales history to drive that forecast. I'm going to take it one step further to one of the more complex areas of new products, where we're dealing with short life cycle products with heavy front-loaded demand, where you really need to nail it right out of the gate, or you miss a lot of opportunity to realize the potential there. Isaac, any thoughts on that there?
Yeah, well, it reminded me of a conversation I was having this week with someone at a brand management company, and their specialty is working with companies that are brands that are trying to grow their market share, whether they're a new startup or an existing company that maybe has new product launches. And we were talking about some of the challenges they have when you're, yeah, good point, Karen. Yeah, if there are any questions that come up, please, anyone feel free to drop them in the chat. And Peter and I, we talked about this before. We're happy to just go ahead and jump into your questions as it's relevant to the conversations that we're having. So don't feel like you have to wait to the end to propose your questions or share them in the chat. Thank you. But that conversation was really around how are we going to, or how do they help companies? What are some of the challenges they help them solve with identifying overstock and understocking? There's things like missed revenue opportunities, but also if you have a new product launch and you're trying to get it on Amazon, there can be issues with maintaining top new product rankings, right? A lot of the search engine optimization and challenges that come with having enough inventory, but then also if it's a new product, a lot of times you might have unlimited capital to support that. So how do you find that balance between the replenishment time frame, the inventory demand that you're going to have, the location of the inventory, and then getting that information out to your trading partners? So I'll bring in some of the conversations I've had in the past too, with different either brands, brand managements, retailers, et cetera, to our conversation going forward. So Peter, back to you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Isaac. What I've found is that most manufacturers, distributors, retailers who are managing these short life cycle products, they don't really have the luxury of relying on a shotgun approach. Just blast inventory out to all stores, stack them high, watch them fly. It's kind of an old school philosophy there, where with as much data as we have and the sophisticated systems we have, you leave so much opportunity on the table by doing something like that. You are risking just massive returns and overstocks. So what we try to do here, and what we would suggest to anybody that we're working with, is let's work from a bottoms-up approach. Let's look at that most granular level, a store SKU combination. If you are releasing a new product or a product line where there are multiple SKUs, there can be variation between those SKUs regionally, among different retail chains. All of those elements have to come into play. And really, again, short life cycle products, those first few days after the launch are super critical to the overall success or the failure of that new product. So it's really important to be as accurate as possible right out of the gate so that you maximize your sales potential and you avoid any disasters due to out of stocks and consumers left wanting product that they can't find.
Yeah, Peter, I think that's great. We can use that as an overall theme for our conversation today, that short life cycle product. I think there's so much that goes into planning that, and when you have a very steep, sale curve and a very steep decay curve for the sales when that product, the life cycle is ending, it really is important to get that right. If it's a longer term stable product, it's a little bit different in how you manage that inventory planning versus a very short life cycle product. I think that'd be very relevant to our conversation today, then we can extrapolate from there. So let's take a look at the first three sections on this slide. We'll look around, inventory management, supply chain efficiencies, and financial planning. And we've broken it out into some ways that we see how Algo helps our customers. And we've highlighted a few that I wanted to touch on here, Peter. So what elements, or what are some elements that you think should be considered when planning a new product launch?
Yeah, Isaac, first of all, I'll say that these first three sections, the inventory management, supply chain efficiencies, financial planning, and we've kind of bolded a few of the items within here that I find just really speak to what you're trying to accomplish within your supply chain. If you're trying to run an efficient supply chain and accurately manage your new product launches, this is really what it boils down to. So how do you achieve this? What are the data elements that you can bring into the equation that get you to this point where you are maximizing efficiency and optimizing your inventory balance? So one of the most important things that you have to play with at your disposal is historical sales performance of items that have already existed in the marketplace. I'm going to look for items that are and products that are as similar as possible to the new product that I have coming out, generally referred to as comps, right? But then how do I identify those? What critical elements need to come into play for me to know that I have selected the optimal comps for my new product launch? First and foremost, who's the target consumer that I'm trying to sell this product to? And what products did that consumer buy previously? There is enough data out there, or at least there should be within most companies, to help try to narrow this down and assemble what that looks like. Which historical product most closely aligns with that target consumers? Where is there strong correlation? So as we think about that, Isaac, I don't know, any thoughts that you have in that area before I keep going on here?
Yeah, that's good. So I had a conversation yesterday, actually. We probably spent 15 minutes on this in the other customer visit that I had here in Florida. And we were talking about as they go, they're an apparel-based company. And a lot of the times the new products they have, it might be a new style. It might be a new color. It might be a seasonal color, something that's not necessarily a brand new product that they're carrying, but it's a new version or new iteration of that product. And how do you actually try and manage that? And for us, a lot of the conversation came back to relevance. How relevant, or how would you associate that, and being able to weigh that relevance from the past products to the future products, and then being able to consistently track how accurate you are in that forecast.
Yeah.
Identifying what's really important. What are the effective levers that are having the big impact on your forecast accuracy or on those products that are moving, and being able to identify that then not only for that launch, but then you continually to iterate, right? You're not just having a system that says, here's what it is, and we'll just plug in some numbers in Excel. It's a continuous iteration of the process and towards more accurate forecasts.
Yep, I fully agree with you. So as you're trying to get to understanding and finding those like products and finding strong correlation that appeals to that consumer, I break it down into two different sides of the coin here, if you will. I have my quantitative data and I have my qualitative data, right? So quantitative data is pretty simple. Your base core elements are my POS or my sales history that already exists from historical items, like items. Tied directly to that is my shipments, my returns. What did I send in? How much of that did I sell? How much came back? Real simple equation that gives you an idea of how a item that's already had an opportunity to sell in the marketplace, how did it perform? That can all inform my decision into how I move forward with planning for a new item. But then looking at the other side of that coin into the qualitative data, this is where you really start to fine tune. And this is where you look for that correlation with the new product that's coming out and how it appeals to that consumer. So some examples of those qualitative data elements. And for this, I think most easily explained if I tap into one of Algo's client bases, which is movie studios, where for years now we've been helping them manage their inventory in retail stores for their DVD and Blu-ray products. So studios like Sony, Warner Brothers, Universal, Disney, and handling their inventory in Walmart, Best Buy, Target, Dollar General, and many other retail chains as well. So qualitative data elements, really big picture items here. If I have a new movie coming out, what genre? Is it action, comedy, drama, horror? And what formats am I talking about? Is it a DVD, a Blu-ray, a 4K? Do we have some multi-features that have many movies packaged together? Do we have some special SKUs where Walmart has an exclusive that has some bonus content? All of those elements will drive the sales potential of the new item. That format genre combination is huge. So what we've seen here is that if I have a DVD that's in the horror genre, that's going to perform radically different at Walmart than it will at Best Buy, and radically different at Target as well. There are combinations where Target, Best Buy, Walmart, Meijer, Fred Meyer, Dollar General are all going to be my strongest retailers depending on the combination of format and genre. So understanding those elements are huge in accurately predicting and forecasting what will happen with a future launch. Excuse me. The stronger the correlation that I can find in my historical items when pairing it with my new item and pairing that with what we believe the target audience to be, the more reliable those comps tend to be as we move forward in this planning process.
Mm-hmm. Are there other elements that you typically consider that help drive the accuracy for the forecasts?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The ones that I discussed already, those are the major core elements. But depending on the new product that we're talking about, there are so many other things that can come into play. Things like pricing, placement in a store. Where has a Walmart or a Target agreed to place this item within their store? Is it just in line where a consumer has to go hunting for it? Is it on an end cap? Is it at front register? Obviously, a big element in retail stores is corrugate. So if I have a large enough release that's deemed worthy of getting a center aisle temporary corrugate display, that's amazing, right? I suddenly have eyes on my product. I get advertising in store via the display, but I have a love-hate relationship with corrugate because what it comes down to is at times it can force too much product into that store. I love the presentation value that I get out of that. I love that it's center aisle. It speaks to the consumer. It drives impulse buy. But are those impulse purchases going to be enough to offset the potential that I'm overstocking the stores by sending in additional inventory to send a full display that looks good and appeals to not just the retailer, but my store manager's got to be on board with that as well. Otherwise, they're going to pull the thing off the floor if it looks empty and isn't a great performance. So fine balance there. Corrugate's not for every new product, but that's something to consider. Other elements, Isaac, seasonality. Where are we within our calendar year? Is my product impacted by change in season, by a holiday? Obviously, Q4 holiday buying is an obvious one, but there are products that are impacted by Valentine's Day, by Easter, by Halloween. Again, just general seasons, time of the year. If I'm dealing in clothing, I'm in springtime, I'm moving in my summer wardrobe items. And then quickly I'm moving in my fall and winter, and there's a very quick change of assortment based on that seasonality. Region-specific demand is another element that comes into play. And another big one that ties in potentially on the quantitative side is advertising and marketing. Do I have a budget level of that advertising and marketing plan that I can use in a mathematical equation that tells me if I'm spending $1 million versus $10 million, what does that do to the overall potential of my consumer buying potential? And then competition. That's the kind of the last one I'm going to touch on here. And that comes in multiple angles. So what other products are releasing at the same time as mine that are going to compete for that consumer interest and that consumer dollar. Competing retailers. I mentioned before, if Walmart has an exclusive on a new movie release, is that going to drive more consumers to Walmart instead of Best Buy, instead of Target, instead of some regional chains like Meyer or Fred Meyer? I have to account for all of those things in my planning to get that right balance of inventory into every individual store.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and that as you talk about getting the right inventory, the right location, that makes me think of customer experience and customer satisfaction. So looking at the slide, it sounds kind of more in the middle of there, and the impact that our customers have on our businesses. We're all in the business to essentially meet the needs and expectations of our customers. And if you don't have inventory, if we don't have the right product in the right place at the right time and in the right quantities, it might take longer than they're expecting to get it. If it's going to take too long to get it, they might order from someone else. You might have negative customer experience there. There's losses in revenue and things. So my question for you then, Peter, is thinking about other challenges with maintaining on-shelf availability. And that availability can be whether it's at a retailer's location, it can be at an owned warehouse location that you have, or maybe you even have a fulfillment center that you're shipping to your customers directly. So I'm thinking of some of the companies I'm talking to that have distribution centers. Maybe they're selling parts and components that would go out for repairs for some of their companies. How would you think about maintaining that challenges of the proper amounts of inventory?
Yeah, Isaac, it speaks to the overall what we're trying to accomplish here, right? If I accurately forecast and I hit the right number at a bottoms up individual store product SKU level, and then roll that up to a chain, roll that over to a warehouse, that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. So in answering, I'm going to spin this one on you a little bit. How does that impact the comp items that I'm looking at bringing in to drive that forecast? That to me is such an important element that sometimes can get overlooked. If what I am trying to accomplish is use historical sales to drive my future forecast, what happens if those historical items ran out of stock? I only shipped enough to get me through a couple days. Then I spent the next few days out of stock while I was waiting for replenishment to come in. I am not accurately capturing the true consumer demand at that store SKU level. And if I continue to use items that out of stocked as my comp items, I hit this ongoing spiral where I am decreasing my forecast and continuing to perpetuate this issue where I'm going to run out of stock before I expected to or before I wanted to, before I had a chance to get product back into the store. So one important thing to consider here is lost sales and incorporating those lost sales into your planning. I've had the luxury, as I mentioned before, of recently working at Algo directly with our development team in building out some of our new product inventory planning systems. And in doing so, I saw the opportunity to incorporate this lost sales problem into the mix. So now we have an automated solution in place for that. I don't have to export things into Excel and manually manipulate this and try to bump things up where I'm just sort of guessing at what sales did I miss? What am I needing to account for where demand wasn't actually realized? We have lost sales calculations that exist in the system that automatically add that missing inventory back into the picture for a new product launch. So to me, that's one of the most exciting things that we've got going here, that I spent 20 years of my career not having this available, and now that it's there, it's like the secret sauce. We are actually realizing and correcting for that missed demand.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned in your introduction that you've worked with a lot of different systems and that a lot of times you ended up coming back to Excel. So what does that mean for companies who are trying to use other systems or Excel to answer some of these questions around lost sales and impacting their forecasting?
I mean, really simply, they're spending a lot of time doing this that they don't need to, right? If I am having to look at store by store, where did we run into out of stocks and what would that expected demand truly have been? I can spin my wheels for hours and hours trying to estimate what that would look like. Whereas within our Algo system, with the click of a button, it's doing it automatically for us. So I've eliminated that waste of time. It's not a waste, right? but it sort of is. It sort of is. We all have so much on our plates. If I can do something within seconds that someone else is taking minutes or hours to do, I'll take that every day, right? So whether it's our system or somebody else's, what this really gets back to is the need to have access to tools and technologies that are going to aid in your effort. What systems can be utilized that really just streamline your approach and act not as a hindrance but a help. That's really what I'm trying to get across there.
Yeah, I think it's a great segue. Then maybe we can start talking about the operational efficiencies column here, farthest on the right that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what are some other things that you need to account for when you're trying to achieve those operational efficiencies?
Yeah, if you look down at the bottom here where it says lacking flexibility and efficiency to adapt and no ability to respond effectively to evolving landscapes, change is eternal. We are always going to encounter change in our lives and in business. So if you're not prepared for that, and if you don't have a plan of how you will manage that, you're not setting yourself up for success. So having the flexibility and efficiency to adapt to demand shifts, market changes, evolving business landscapes. I mean, 4 years ago, COVID hit us all by surprise. And I would struggle to find a single product line that was carried in retail that was not impacted in one way or another, positively or negatively, by that change. And then we've spent the next several years after that trying to normalize what demand planning looked like, right? There were some massive peaks and valleys within there just trying to come out and normalize. And in many cases, we're there. In some cases, we probably aren't. There are some industries that would be impacted forever based on that. But then outside of a very once in a lifetime event like COVID, something as simple as a store closure. I have a Walmart down the street from me. If that store were to close next week, where is that demand going to shift to? So this really speaks to the need to be operating with recent data. The recency of data is super important because that's going to drive my decision making from the most relevant and recent product history and sales history, not looking back 2 years or 4 years to some spikes and valleys that we saw. I want to know what's happening today in those stores, and that's going to inform my decisions today and tomorrow.
Right? Yeah, and that insight into what's happening in the stores, I think, is really important. The COVID example is really relevant to a lot of the companies that I'm talking to, because the history they had and the sales they had, certain industries had major spikes during that time frame, and they've since tapered off. So being able to identify what is relevant from that time frame when you look at your forward planning is very important. Another thing you were talking about, though, is stores. And I know a lot of suppliers, they're working with retail trading partners. They might not actually own the final distribution or do the allocation. You had that experience from a VMI model, vendor managed inventory. But for a supplier who's fulfilling to a retailer's distribution center, or they're just looking at fulfilling a distribution center, not necessarily end store level, what do you typically see there? What does that mean for a supplier when they don't have control over that final mile of allocation?
Yeah, it's obviously not every supplier, manufacturer, retailer is going to be in that luxury situation that I was early in my career, where it was true VMI from beginning to end of the supply chain, right? That was a idealistic viewpoint where you had control over everything. Most don't have that ability. So assuming that you don't, it really boils down to needing to have a holistic view of your overall supply chain and fantastic communication at every point in between. You have to be able to set expectations across the board. Be a good partner to between supplier, retailer, manufacturer, understanding that you should all have the same end goal of optimizing your inventory so that you can maximize your sales, minimize your returns, minimize your markdowns. That's how everyone within that supply chain will remain most profitable. Mm-hmm. If I'm a supplier and I'm not getting the support that I need, do I have to increase my days of supply? Do I have to incorporate some degree of safety stock because I can't count on my replenishment getting put out into stores on a timely manner? A way around that, of course, would be I maintain a very good holistic view of that supply chain and communication points along the way. So when I ship product into a store, it's not going to be sitting in the back room. I can send some advanced notification that here is when we need the service staff to be in stores, stocking the shelves, so we don't miss a beat. Product is always available to the consumer, and you can run very lean if you can just maximize all of those points along the way, right? But really, real-time data is one of the key elements here that will help drive that. If I'm waiting days or weeks to get my POS data, my inventory data, to see that my shipments have gone out, I can't stay on top of this. So incorporating systems that drive real-time data, allowing you to have a current snapshot, current picture, really improves your degree to which you can plan accurately. With that, I see that we are well over time now, Karen. So I want to toss it back to you, see if there's any questions out there or if there's anything else that you wanted to discuss.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I think that was a great conversation. We did book the webinar a bit longer today because I figured this conversation would be great and generate lots of chat. So that's wonderful. A couple of questions. So number one, and we run into this a lot at Algo, I know, and you've already touched on it, Peter, somewhat earlier. I've only ever used Excel for forecasting. How does this change my day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, Excel's just, it's great for what it is. And don't get me wrong, I'm in Excel each and every day. It's a great tool to have. Now, it does have its limitations. And I am not able to, within Excel, incorporate all of the different data elements that I want, layer everything in. Whereas within a system like we built here, and even other systems that I've used elsewhere, you have the ability to load into it algorithms, formulas that just solve complex problems like that without it having to manually deal with them in Excel.
And another one, my overall accuracy is currently at 92%. Can I expect to see improvements, with a solution such as Algo?
Yeah, I'll say this. Retailer to retailer, product category to product category, your accuracy metrics are going to shift. Your expectations for where your accuracy metrics should reside are going to be different. 92 would be very high, and that's a very efficient business. Some companies like to operate in the 80% range. That's just based on where the consumer buying patterns lie within that product category, how frequent the purchasing is. But what we have done is we've built our system on our end here to really maximize down to that store SKU level grain. Again, the bottoms up approach, ensuring that each granular level is as accurate as possible, and then building up to the top instead of forcing our way down. Instead of a shotgun approach where we just throw a ton of inventory out there and wait to see what sells and then build our forecast after that. If you start at that granular level with all of the data that we've discussed today, all of those elements, if you can incorporate as many relevant elements as possible and utilize a streamlined system to save time in that approach, you can really build on that accuracy, and you should see improvements, especially if you're coming from something like managing your business in Excel to a system like we have at Algo. You will absolutely see efficiencies kind of skyrocket initially. So
yeah, and Peter, I'll kind of
go ahead.
I'll piggyback on that one too. So I've got a customer currently in implementation right now, and they weren't quite there, but they were close in their accuracy. And there's a couple things that came to mind to them. One is it took a lot of time. They were spending a lot of effort getting to that point, to create the reports, to aggregate the data, to normalize it, to cleanse it, and then being able to get it into systems where they could try and visualize it and work with it. So there was a huge time savings opportunity for them. And they were considering, is our time better spent making decisions, or is our time better spent actually trying to just aggregate data and prepare it so we can make decisions? And they wanted to change things more towards the decision siding of the equation. The other part was, there's still opportunity there. That was a whole, a holistic number for them where they saw a lot of high accuracy, but there were things, as we've talked about today, like lost sales. being able to identify what are your high margin products, what are the products that really impact customer satisfaction, tracking new product launches more effectively, and things that can actually have a very positive impact on the business from a revenue standpoint to make sure you're not losing sales, to improve your margins. So even though you might have what looks like a good number on paper, in reality, there still was a significant amount of opportunity from a financial perspective and from a customer satisfaction perspective to improve their metrics and improve their KPIs.
Yep, absolutely. And Isaac, as you mentioned, if they're struggling with making that decision on how to spend their time, aggregating the data or acting on it, that speaks to them not having enough time for everything. So if you can add efficiencies to the solution via software, you build time in your day that allows you to do more things, be more accurate. It's just a major part of that solution that drives efficiency, right?
Right. And I think the impact it's had on the morale of the team, because when I would talk with them, really no one would come into the office and just be really excited to just try and crunch these Excel documents and try and remember to grab the report from here and run this one and copy it and download it and put it together and make sure no one else was in the spreadsheet at the time moving things around and then having to go back and fix it because someone screwed it up over lunch. That wasn't what they enjoyed doing. They enjoyed being able to make improvements on the business, and they would get satisfaction from driving real change and measurable change. And so that, I think, is another thing that I'm really excited about with that team, is to see the transition of how they work together and what they're able to achieve now that the constraints of getting the data and just preparing the data are starting to be removed.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, we've often talked about in other supply chain chats about reducing or eliminating like the Sunday scaries, right? And that's kind of part of what you're talking about there, Isaac, is just enabling a team to work more efficiently, smarter, faster, and just really get to the heart of productivity rather than, all these manual processes and frustrations there. So that is fantastic. Thank you, guys. I think this was a really nice perspective. Peter, you from implementation, Isaac, you from really customer side and seeing our customers go through implementation and beyond. So I think that has been a really fresh perspective. On the screen, we do have Peter and Isaac's email coordinates. If you want to reach out or you have a question, some thoughts, whatever you would like to chat with them about, please do feel free. And with that, I think that we shall wrap it up today and thank everybody for attending. And I thank you so much, Peter and Isaac, for your time and coming together with me today to have a little chat about supply chain. So thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Isaac. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.